Hello, and welcome back to the Triangle Business Podcast. Today is our 20th episode, and we are having another guest here today, Christy. And Scott, I'm going to get you to introduce her and how awesome she is. So I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, welcome everybody. I'm super happy that we get to have Christy Hayes here with us today. She is a dear friend of mine, and she also runs a uh, nonprofit organization called Otherworld. And um, I was a participant at Otherworld. We're going to talk about a little bit more about what it is. I was a participant in 2017. I got Joey to come in 2021. I have been a staff member since 2021. Um, it is my favorite thing I do all year. Um, it is also, uh, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's the hardest thing I do all year. It is the most combined physical, mental, and emotional output I do in any week of my year. And so, Christy, welcome. Um,
Thank you.
can you tell our audience like a little bit about what Otherworld is and what it gives to the world?
Oh, sure. That we went deep fast. I like that.
Of course. Yeah.
Otherworld is a nonprofit. We run what we call adventure weekends, which is a phrase that means not terribly much because we made it up because as to the best of my knowledge, we're doing something that not anybody else out there is doing. The idea of Otherworld is that I write a story, and for one weekend out of the year, I have 115 of the finest human beings on the planet, and I give them roles in that story, and then we are joined by 66 participants each year, and they become the heroes of that story, and they get to move around in that world and interact in it, and they all have a super fun time, and some of them, at least, I think, leave the weekend with a bigger sense of themselves, an increased sense of what they can do. If they come with somebody that they already know, and especially if it's somebody they've known for a long time, they inevitably leave with a much bigger sense of what that person can do, which is a super cool feeling when it's a parent and a kid, or when it's longtime spouses and people who have been married for 20 years, and to see them leave going, my wife is good at a thing that I didn't know about is a super exciting part of that. Um, and we kind of fell into doing it a million years ago. The first one was in 1994. We incorporated as a nonprofit in 1992 when we had to reassure everybody that we knew what we were doing, even though we were so young. We kept saying that for longer than we needed to. People were finally like, we're not actually worried about that anymore. You are not as young as you think you are, which we rediscover every year when we go to take heavy things and put them in other inconvenient places. So
I'd
that's
love to hear more about the origin story, if you will. Like,
I would love to tell you that.
what made you go from this matters to me to actually building something real?
It happened by accident when uh, just after I graduated from Wesleyan University in 1990. And in 1991, there was a group of students at the school who were running this at the same camp that we still use. It was a more traditional LARP structure at the time. We still have trappings of a LARP, a live action role playing, um, but this, like, and it had started very straightforward of, people were tying sheets around their necks and pretending it was a cape, and they were running around the woods and doing this, and it was the same group of people pretty much year after year. And sometimes you would be the bad guy and sometimes I would be the bad guy, and then Scott was usually the bad guy because Scott, no, not really. And it was just this group of friends that did this, and we ran the first one that we did, and a lot of the people who'd gotten into this, it was very much a physically based endeavor. Like, there was sword fighting, and that was really important to them. Some of them were SCA people, which is Society for Creative Anachronism, and I wasn't any of those things. And so I ran this with a couple friends, and we we said, okay, well, we want there to be sword fighting and we want there to be running and jumping and all of that, but let's try to make sure that there's opportunities for other people who are good at other things to have their moment to shine as well. And we wrote a story for it, and there was a woman who was a participant at it, and afterwards she sent us a letter and told us that it had changed her life. And this was like this was not on anybody's radar as a possibility, as a goal. This was just a thing that happened. And I can tell you the longer version sometime if you'd like, but the short version of it was the world was compelling enough for her that in that same way that when you read a book or you watch a movie and you're really invested in hoping that this turns out okay, and I hope this good person doesn't die, or I hope the good guys win, or whatever it is, she was invested like that, and it sparked her to do some things that she really didn't believe she was capable of. And then when she got back home, she looked at her life and saw things in that she had been just kind of blindly living with, and said, if I can be brave enough to do something I'm terrified of when I'm in a pretend world, why am I putting up with bad stuff in my real world where, it actually matters so much more? And she felt that being that participating in that kind of gave her the space and the courage to change some big, big things in her life. And she got out of a not great relationship, and she got out of a not great job and found a better job, and decided she didn't need a relationship for a while. And at the point that she was writing to us, she was coming from this place of having stepped into this bigger version of herself. And we thought, oh wow, that's kind of amazing that happened. And what if we did it again, but we kind of purposely structured it to try to make that sort of space available for people who wanted it? And that's what we did. And we
Beautiful.
started reading a whole lot about Outward Bound and Project Adventure and a lot of other really great groups that are doing things like that, but with very different trappings, and saying, okay, we're not going to take you hiking in Colorado. We're going to take you into this pretend world and see if we can accomplish kind of similar goals there. And it turned out much to everybody's surprise that in fact we sort of could. So that's the that's our
And
origin.
for those who don't know, where is this located at?
I it makes me so crazy when I click on things online and I can't find this out. And now, thank you, because I've done the exact same thing. It is located where we run the weekends is Pomfret, Connecticut, which is a tiny, tiny rural community. If people have heard of it at all, there's a very shishi prep school there called Pomfret Academy with lovely old stone buildings. But um, we are on 350 wooded acres in Pomfret, Connecticut.
It is absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous for
It's
someone who's attended, such as myself, and for
Yay.
those.
I mean, we
So
also cheat because we do it at the beginning of October, which,
this is
when
amazing.
they like we still get leaves changing, and our lake, and we have
Yeah.
a lake and a waterfall, and it's pretty great.
Christy, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but in a massive coincidence, an employee of one of my clients grew up in Pomfret,
That's it's
and she lives here in North Carolina now. And when I mentioned, she's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Connecticut." And she's like, "I'm from Connecticut." And I'm like, "Well, this is kind of the part that nobody's
okay.
from." And she's like, "But I'm from there."
Yeah, you probably know some people that we pass on the street because
Yeah. Um, Christy, I say this as somebody who's, yes, I've been a participant, and it was a life-changing event for me in a way that I never saw coming. I will tell, I will share that the area that I actually grew in was patience. Partly because before I left to go on my adventure, I asked my smartass 16-year-old daughter, how could I be more heroic? And she said, you could be more heroically patient. And so it was kind of on my radar, but it turned out that that happened in a very big way. And if anybody ever wants to hear the somewhat tearful story of how that happened, then I'm happy to share it. But one of the things I've observed is you don't stop having breakthroughs. If you're fortunate enough to be a staff member, every time I come to camp, I grow and learn something in some new way. And I think maybe one of the ways that this relates to what we usually talk about here on the podcast about business is like if you surround yourself by high level people, like amazing people, then um you sort of can't help but continue to grow. Like you'll just, I don't know if it's osmosis or imitation or what, but it
Yeah,
just happens.
yeah.
Um, it it causes me to ask a sort of loaded question.
Hmm.
But like, are there things that you know you're looking for when you invite somebody to be on staff?
Um, there's, I am super lucky at this point because we have a database of people who have applied to express interest in being a staff volunteer. And when I say staff volunteer, the staff volunteers pay to come and work really hard. And I have a database of about 250 people who would like to join the staff. And of that, I'm going to take about three of them. So I can afford to be super, super particular. Um, I look for different things every time in terms of demographic and skill set. Um, the the two pieces of it, um, like I won't consider taking somebody who's not kind, and that's like right there. It doesn't matter what anybody's skill is. Nobody is so great at a thing that I want to be working with somebody who's not kind. And I also look for people who had a meaningful experience of some kind of their own when they were at Otherworld because unlike like I've never been an Otherworld participant, and they are going to bring something to this that I don't have, and that's really powerful. And it's always something different, um, and it kind of doesn't matter what it was, but it's even if all of it is that they had so much fun, and that was its own kind of break and step up for them, then that's fine. But yeah.
I have a question about the
Mm,
experience, mostly for participant side, is
mm.
there's something that clearly pulls people in deeply with this. Having done it myself, I know why. But for those who don't know, what do you think people are really craving that this experience gives them?
Oh, that is such a good and interesting question. One of the things uh, I didn't so in 2000 um, in right after 9/11, um, uh, in 2001 the event we ran was a week and a half after September 11th, and we gave participants a chance to opt out if they wanted because we had being in New England, we had a number of people coming from New York City. We had uh, people coming from Boston who had lost coworkers or family members on planes that went down, and it was a really hardcore thing. And I'm not sure I understood this about Otherworld until then, um, but people are craving, I think, a world in which goodness is evident. Um, there are there are some things I'm really careful of when I write characters, and I don't think this is going to be a spoiler for anybody, because I write good guy characters and bad guy characters and middle of the road kind of characters. The one thing that I don't ever do is I never write a bad guy character who seems like a good guy, which is counterintuitive because if like me you read a lot of mysteries, like that's the whole point of a mystery is you have to take your bad guy and make him seem like such a good guy that you kind of have forgotten he's even there, and then at the end you can be shocked when he turns out to be the murderer. And I don't do that because people come and they form these connections in ways that I didn't expect, and there is something so profound, I think, about seeing that you are working to help somebody who is truly, truly a good person. And I think that people need that in a way that I didn't understand until I saw it. Right after September 11th, people simply, whether it was a character or not, people needed to believe that there was goodness and to be able to see that, for them to see it. And weirdly, it doesn't matter that it's pretend. It
Yeah,
really doesn't. Um, so
that's
stories are
beautiful.
powerful even when they're not true.
And if you're in them.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, everybody's favorite story is one that they're in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from my experience doing that, that was probably the most magical thing. It's just like, I won't spoil it, but like stepping in essentially and just like, whoa, and just
Also,
feeling,
you can't actually spoil it because people always think they're like, I didn't say too much to my friends. I was like, your friends have already stopped listening. So
Yeah.
their poor little eyes, they just glaze over like you can say whatever. They're not. But
good to
but
know.
I love hearing that. That's wonderful. Yay, thank you.
Yeah, it's just felt like I crossed a veil, if you will, into
Mm,
magical of just like everything's different. How do I move in this world? And that came
hmm
pretty quickly. But I think that was my favorite experience, was just
I'll
the literally stepping in.
I'll point out also, um, there was like, because you talked about how it was after 9/11,
hmm
and I think, uh, uh, you know, I became a staff member in 2021, which was the first adventure that we had post COVID.
Oh.
And that was the year that Joey was a participant.
Uh-huh.
And I think that was another sort of like societal inflection point where people
hmm
were like, they had maybe isolated even sometimes more than they wanted to, and stepping
Yes.
back out into the world, even that maybe felt heroic or challenging
Yes.
in some
Very
ways.
much so. Very,
And
very much so.
I remember that there was a lot of briefing with the staff about being gentle and kind with people who are, maybe have spent the last year and a half just not seeing a lot of people.
Yeah.
And like if folks are in overwhelm or if they seem a little cranky, you know, continue to keep extending that kindness and support to them. Um, and I really respect an organization that meets people where they are and then uh, seeks to elevate them, like leave them better than we found them, I think is maybe a way of looking at that.
Well, that's.
Um, Joey, you seem like you had another question.
I have many.
Yeah, I mean, like
But
I live in the rarefied air of getting to talk to Christy a lot more than most people do. So,
yeah,
uh, yeah, ask your
love it.
question.
Sure. What another one that comes to mind is you've majorly contributed, because I know this wasn't a sole endeavor unless I'm incorrect
Nope.
about that,
Nope. You're right.
building a community where people just don't just attend, but they contribute, create, and invest heavily in time, energy, and effort. How do you feel like, how did building this like feel? Like, how does it feel like being a major contributing factor to that?
Um. Okay. So it it is a it's such a privilege to be able to do that. It also means that I am I am the creator, but I'm not the sole creator by in any sense of the word, including the participants who come. And it's a constant thing that I need to remind myself that I am making a space for that. And it even after doing it now for 30 years, that's still a struggle.
Mhm.
It still means, it's not the same as if I was writing a book and handing it to you. And unless you take a marker or something, like that stays my book. And yes, you're gonna picture things in your head, but I don't have to see those things. Like that's just, I get to make a thing and then it's done and it goes out into the world. And this isn't that. This is needing to say, okay, I am going to write a character, but somebody else is going to costume that character, and somebody else is going to build a set that that character inhabits, and then somebody else is going to play that character. And that character belongs to all of us. And I don't, and there's times when I step in if I say something where I think something is going to be problematic, but for the most part, I really try to let that be a process that everybody gets a part in. And that's hard for me because Scott knows I like to control all the things. And it really, the joy of it is when I can step back and see something happen that I say, absolutely, in 100 years, that would not have come out of my head. And look at this beautiful thing that we all made that only got to happen because I had to step back and say, okay, you guys now take this.
Mm.
So it's still a struggle, but
Yeah.
it's worth it when it works.
This is
Beautiful.
another place where I really do think that one of the reasons why I was excited to have you as a guest, Christy, is like, look, Otherworld makes money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is, but this is not designed to be a significant income stream in your life. This
It
is
is not.
you are
Correct.
every bit as much of a volunteer, and I
Mm-hmm.
would submit much more so than any of the rest of us are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that what you just said there, that willingness to go, I know I might have come up with this, and I know I might even be the person that is driving the core concept, but a willingness to relinquish control and let other people do it their way and leave their mark on it, as long as it's not too far off context from what
Mm-hmm.
I had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, letting go of that absolutely must occur for any business to grow.
Yeah, and it's hard.
It's
It's
really hard.
really like, and the more that it's yours, the harder it is. And this is like, this has been mine for like forever. Before I was married, before I had my kids, like I had this, and just
On that
Um,
note, I have two other questions.
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
One that comes to mind is I want to step back into, excuse me, more of the kind of the people and the people that contribute question. Then I'll go to a
Yeah.
business question next, if
Yeah.
that's cool.
Okay,
Which
sure.
is what happens to people when they step into different characters' role? What you see? Do you see real changes in their confidence, connection, how they show up in real life? I know you mentioned that, but I want to hear what
Yeah.
you see.
Um, it is, that to me is one of my absolute favorite pieces of this. Getting to give a character to somebody feels like this gift for them, um, because it makes a space again for them to do that. And Scott is right. Like it's the staff. It's a little bit of a scam. Like the staff get so much more out of it than the participants do, that I kind of feel like maybe somebody should look into that. Um, but I I see, like, people write to me later and talk about um, having a role and carrying a piece of it with them, and taking it with them where they need to go to to be that person. Even when being in a story, and again, part of this is the difference, the fact that we are all, whether we are participants or we are staff, we are all in this story. Even if it's not a character that I am playing, we had a storyline that was about, what it means to be a parent, to have a child, and in this particular case, it was about a non-biological connection where somebody saw this lack in a child's life and stepped in, and this kid is now basically an adult and what that means. And that was just one of the stories that, like, the number of people who have written to me because they're parenting stepchildren, or they're bringing a step parent into their kids' lives or something, and the confidence and courage to take on that super hard role. And people were writing and saying that they thought about this story and that was the thing that gave them the courage to do that. And I again was like, I made that up. Like, I can say anything I want there, but having seen it happen, and of course it does work, because we all know that, but it, like, being a part of that story made a space where they could say, I can believe in a world where you know love is going to make us a family, and I saw it happen, and now I'm going to go do it in the real world. And that's such a, like, that's the gift that I get back from doing this. So
That's beautiful.
I want to make a clarification for anybody who's listening. So Christy writes this plot, and the staff members embody the
yes,
characters in that plot. The participants are not asked to pretend
correct,
to be
correct,
somebody else. The participants are encouraged to come as a more heroic version of yourself, or maybe the most heroic version of yourself you can currently envision.
mm-hmm.
And I think, to me, like, that makes a huge difference, right?
Yes,
You're not
thank you for clarifying that,
you're
because
not
I
pretending
I
to
jumped into
be,
a weird side piece, but yes.
yeah, you're not pretending to be somebody that you aren't.
Mm-hmm.
You're acting at your highest capacity of who you really are. And I
Yeah,
think that, like, when you're operating on the edges like that,
yes,
you often uncover something that you're like, man, I never thought
yeah,
that I'd be up for that. In fact, Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the sort of the two guarantees that we try
mm-hmm.
to offer, what I tell people is, if you come, number one, at minimum, you'll have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a good time, we'll give you double your money back.
Double your money back. Yep. In
And
fact, and we say a great time. We don't even say a good time. So
okay, all right.
yeah.
Well, I'm underselling it.
Nope.
But and then the other thing we sort of guarantee is, we bet you'll do something you never would have imagined that
Yeah.
you are doing. And
Yeah.
that's one of those moments where I've done it, and I've watched people time and time again just be like, well, I'm going for this, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to step up and do this.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's not even a hesitation. They're doing it before they even realize that they like forgot to be afraid, because I think we create a space where
I think sometimes they forget to be afraid, and I
pretty
think
soon.
sometimes they're really afraid, and it matters to them enough that they don't let it stop them.
Yep.
And I
Big.
think those are two different awesome things. We talked just like at the very beginning when I said it grew out of the tradition of LARPing, and one of the big reasons I no longer refer to it as role playing is because role playing by definition is pretending, and I think that it's most powerful when people are, I mean, you are pretending to some extent. You're in a world where magical things happen and a story is real and you're going by a different name, but you're not pretending about who you are and what you feel. And it's the people who let it be real who have the most fun and the most transformative of an experience, if that's what they want.
Mm, well
So
said. Beautiful.
Joy,
I
I think you said you had
he did.
another
He said he had
question
another
here, and
question,
then
I
we
do.
also have
a
we have at
business
least
question.
one from our
We
prior
do.
guest.
Yes, we do. So this question is for all the small business owners listening. What can they learn from the ways you created such a strong emotional connection with
Oh,
your audience, participants, and people that contribute?
man. Um, that is such a good question. Let's see. I think that one thing that kind of happened in this just by accident is that we started doing this. I was 2 years out of college, and unsurprisingly, my life has changed a whole bunch since then. And one thing that we had to figure out, that I had to figure out, was how does this thing interact in my life? And I think that anytime you are running a small business, that is not a job where it's 5 o'clock and you punch a punch card and then you leave and you don't do it again until 9 a.m. So it's whatever you're doing, it is part of your life. And I think you have to keep thinking really hard about how you want it to be in your life. And it's not always going to stay inside the boxes you put it in. It's going to ooze out no matter what you do. So you have to kind of say, okay, well, where am I comfortable with it oozing out? And where is it not allowed to go? And that was, like I said, we started doing this. I was living up in a 4-person apartment in Boston. Um, I was dating my now husband, but we were not, he was still an undergrad when this started. So that was a very different relationship. And then we got married, and then we moved to Connecticut, where I knew, nobody, despite growing up here originally. And then we had a child, and then suddenly we had 3 children. And, like, especially with the introduction of children, just keep stopping and saying, okay, what does this mean now? Like, how do I fit this into my life? Where can it overflow and where can it not? And I kind of had to be I would like to say I was very conscious of it. I was not, but I think I was as conscious as I could have been about continuing to realize that I had to keep being me while I kept doing this, and where I was where I was going to let it have free reign and where I was going to make a boundary. And, like, one of the things was figuring out, how do I integrate having kids. When I had my daughter, I was working a job where I was traveling a whole lot for work. And I was like, okay, I don't want to be traveling a whole lot. And so I stopped working to stay at home with the kids. But that also meant that it was very isolating being here in a community where I didn't know anybody. And so I kind of made a deal with this business saying, okay, you can overflow into this much of my life, but in return, what you are going to give me back is, you have to keep providing a space for community for me, since I no longer have colleagues that I see on a daily basis. And you are going to have to provide a community that I can comfortably have my kids in. And what is that going to look like? And that succeeded kind of more than I anticipated, because now my kids are very, very connected in this. And 2 of the 3 of them have been participants, and those 2 are on staff, and the little one will join us when he's able to, although he's been more staff adjacent than
I was
most
going to
people.
say he
He's
was in the last plot,
I
even though he's never
know.
been a person.
I make theater kids,
I
so that's
listen.
just
I love
I,
that.
I wouldn't. Before we get to our last question, Joey, I would not want to let this moment go by without acknowledging a couple of things, Christy. And I'm sure on some level, you understand that these are things you do really well, but from an outside perspective, I just got to call it out, right? One is Otherworld is a clinic on how stepping into and out of leadership roles can be can really strengthen your leadership skills in the outside world. Like, I love that, like, we have captains for almost everything,
everything.
but um but I don't just mean the fixed positions. Like, I'm the assistant storage captain, and that's great, and I get to contribute in that way. But I don't even mean that. I mean, like, when we're at the camp and we need to do anything, even when it's the non-adventure weekend stuff like
Yeah.
guild weekend and things like that, it's like, this person is going to lead this exercise, or this part of what we're doing right now. It doesn't mean they're better than everybody else. It doesn't mean they're smarter than everybody else. It just means they have the piece of paper that has the instructions on it. And it's a relief to just get to be a follower while they're
Yeah.
doing their thing. And then sometimes they go, "Would you be the leader of this?" And you're like, "Oh, sure, okay." And
Mhm.
so you're getting to step in and out of those roles. And I think that is so useful. Whether you're a business owner or not, I think that is so useful.
I I I agree with that, and I think I know we have one more question,
Yeah,
but can
yeah,
I
no,
say
no, no.
my two
We
important
have
things that
time.
I
We have time.
okay.
We're good.
The the first thing there that I think, and I wish I could say how this happened, but I one thing that I love about the way this organization has grown is that in those situations when somebody is handed the piece of paper and is made the leader of, even if it's just it's time to clean the bathroom. And so, if I say, Joey, pick some people and clean the bathroom, Joey is now in charge of the bathroom. And that's not a position that anybody was excited to get, but now he is vice president of that bathroom. And, but the thing that happens then, I think, is that I haven't always seen in some other organizations is every single person who's helping clean that bathroom wants Joey to win. And the idea that they win when he wins instead of that they win when he loses, and I'm the boss and I come in and I go, well, this bathroom is not that clean yet, and somebody else is like, well, Joey said it was good enough, and look, I just made myself better by putting him down. Like, that doesn't happen. And I think that part of it is the culture from the adventure weekend, the dynamic that we have with participants. Um, it's an unfair playing field. We know the story that's going to happen, and they don't. Um, and if we just wanted to win, we could. Which we can cheat and they can't. It's like it's that's not even a question here. And yet, everybody knows that we only win when they win. And that creates this culture, I think, of being able to celebrate that. And so that when I see that Scott is standing there with his piece of paper and I'm sitting next to somebody who's still talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, stop. Scott's getting ready to start. Let's be quiet. And now every single person sitting there is on Scott's team in a way that makes me really proud to be part of that. Because you can be a follower and you're still doing a really important part in that room. And the other thing I will just thank Scott for is if I have a single big thing that this organization has that we stumbled into that I'm proud of, which is what Scott just did before, which is what we call hearable praise, which is a very specific and focused. Not I don't like I'm reluctant to even call it a compliment. All it is saying, let me tell you what you did. And it's an idea that we've had for a really long time. It's when I brief the staff, it's the thing that I start with every single year because it's super important, and it it builds into this culture of I win when you win. Um, and and I'll be honest, like there's times there will be someone else on this staff that you are not good friends with, and I guarantee you that there will be plenty of times when you are annoyed about something, because there is nothing like all being in one space for 6.5 days and trying to move heavy stuff. Like, you will be annoyed by people. None of these people are angels. Nobody's ever walking around like but it buys that kind of grace to come back from those difficult situations. And that's, we stumbled onto that, and then somehow people took it and ran with it. And if I could
Well,
hand that to other people, that's the piece I would give out.
absolutely. And this is the other, besides the leadership piece, the culture of hearable praise and acknowledgement of what people, not just what's good about them, but how it is manifest in this little corner of the world that we're living in, or even if we see it in other spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Christy is the absolute master of saying to somebody, I see you. Not just I see about you, but I see what you're doing and the impact it's having. And every business owner or organizational leader Like whether you're running a volunteer nonprofit thing or whether you're running a for-profit business that, has employees, like it's great. Yes, pay those people. They need to earn enough money to run their lives. But when you sit them down and you're like, hey, what you did today for that customer and the experience that that created for them is exactly why we have you on this team. And if we could, create that experience for every customer, we'll be a leader in this industry. Like that, if an employee hears that, the the loyalty that it engenders and the way that it makes them feel valued as a member of the team, like I wish I could bottle that and force feed it to every client I've ever had. And like I don't really have clients that are shitty to their employees, but it's one thing to just like not be shitty. It's another thing to like
Yeah.
just elevate them, like lift them up. They'll never forget it. Even if they move on from the organization, you have left them better than you found.
I think that's the real thing because that's how it's different from complimenting because it's really easy to go, you're great and you're great and you're also great. And we've been trained to have that roll off us. And so it's awesome that they're not being shitty to their employees, but even a lot of people who are being nice to their employees, I think once you start looking for opportunities to do this, you can be kinder, you can give them something more than just the you're great, you're great, you're great. Because they are great and they're not believing you when you say that. So you have to prove it.
Well said.
Old employees. No, not really.
All right.
Beautiful.
What's our awesome
So
question from
Tell
our
us.
prior visitor?
Sorry,
we
over
are
talked.
starting. No, apologies. We're all having a good time here.
Okay.
So we're starting a new tradition on this podcast for
Yes.
listeners. I stole this from another podcast I like. And the previous guest will be leaving a question for the current guest and so forth and so forth. So the question that has been left for you, Christy, is if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Oh my goodness. Um, I would have figured out the critical self-care piece a lot sooner. Because we talked in the beginning of this about the fact that this has been happening for 30 years, and I made my joke about, you just have to not stop. And there were a bunch of years there where kind of the only reason I kept going is because stopping sounded even harder than keeping going.
Mhm.
Um, and what am I going to do with all this stuff that's in my house? And how am I going to explain this to people? And what am I going to, my big kid has gone and now my middle kid wants to go and I'm going to have to tell my middle kid he can't do that. So it's easier to keep going. Um, because it took me a really long time. We joke about putting your own oxygen mask on before you do it for the kid sitting next to you. Um, but I think that I still at that point was seeing self-care as an essentially selfish piece of it.
Mm.
And I hadn't realized that I was not doing a good job of taking care of my seatmate yet because I hadn't put my own oxygen mask on. And,
Mhm.
and like it's a pain to do. When you have a gazillion things on your list, taking care of yourself becomes yet another thing. And I cannot imagine anybody is running a small business and does not have a gazillion things on their to-do list. And like anything else, it at the beginning of doing it, it was more work than not. And it took a while to see the benefits of that and to set myself a better schedule and to build in breaks and to build in compassion for my own screw ups and to to draw those boundaries and say these are the places where this is not allowed to ooze into my life, like this is mine and it can't have it. And that took a while. And once it was actually sustainable and doing its own thing, then that was huge. But I didn't get that for a really long time. And part of it, again, because when I was first doing this, like I was 24 and I didn't need as much self care because I was like, cool, I'll just sleep next month. And that was a fine thing to do.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I had little people who were like, wait, what are we having for dinner? And I'm like, dinner will be tomorrow. That's not an answer anymore.
No.
So yeah, it took a long time to get that, and I wish I had, like, I'm always reluctant to change things in the past because it feels like stepping on butterflies to me.
Mm.
But if I could change one thing, that would be the thing, because I would have figured that out way sooner.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Well, Christy, I appreciate the work you're doing. It's very
Thank you.
transformational and has impacted a lot of people's lives. And I love telling the world about it whenever I can. So we really appreciate your
Thank
time
you.
here.
Well, I can only do
Yeah.
it because people trust enough to come and do it. That's the piece I can't do on my own. So I'm grateful for that. And thanks for having me here. This is super
Of
fun.
course.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you, Christy. Really appreciate the chance to chat with you about this. And
My
listen,
pleasure.
if you're hearing all this and this sounds intriguing to you, all
Yes.
you got to do is go to otherworld.org
Not
and
dot com. That's somebody else. Dot
that's right,
org.
Yeah.
.org, because we're a nonprofit, and sign up to get to get the one email a year that says tickets are going to go on sale. And
Yes.
Yes.
only 66 people a year get to do this.
That's right. And
And
we start our registration at the end of June.
that's right.
So in case you're thinking about that,
Yeah.
that's
And
the
the event happens early October. This
early
year it's like the
October.
second, third, and fourth of
I
October.
think
Very
so.
early October. So
Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
um yeah, go sign up. We won't spam you. We'll just send you that email that says, here's your chance. And only 66, like we always sell out.
Yes.
Has it ever not sold out? I know I'm
It
asking you extra
has
quick.
never not sold out. And when you talked about our ridiculously overconfident guarantee, I will point out no one's ever called us on that. They've never had anyone redeem that. So this could be your chance. Make
That's
some
right.
money off us by coming.
Sure.
So
All right.
Well,
Well, thank you everybody for
thank
joining us today.
you.
Thank you, Christy, for being here. Thank you, Joey, for asking amazing
I
questions.
know. Thank you,
And
Joey. That was
we'll
crazy.
look forward to seeing you all the next time.
tune in next time, y'all, and subscribe and follow if you like what you're hearing.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.